It was almost midnight when I finally walked through the front door. My entire body ached from spending 12 hours on my feet at the clinic, running from one patient to the next. The exhaustion seeped into my bones, making even the simple act of kicking off my shoes feel like a chore. The house was quiet, too quiet. I glanced around the living room, noting the untouched couch and the dim lighting. Mason wasn't home. Again. Lately, it felt like I was living alone, even though he had been crashing here for nearly 2 years. He always had an excuse. Late-night meeting, staying at a friend's place, or got caught up with something. It never used to bother me, but tonight, something felt different. I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter and reached for a glass of water when my phone buzzed. I hesitated, glancing at the screen. Aunt Lisa. I swiped open the message and frowned at the attachment she had sent. Check this out. Thought you should see it. Call me when you can. I hesitated before pressing play. The video was shaky, clearly recorded on someone's phone at a party. The camera zoomed in on Mason, lounging on a sleek leather couch, a whiskey glass in his hand. He looked relaxed, comfortable. The kind of comfortable that came with knowing you didn't have to worry about bills, rent, or responsibilities. Then he spoke. Honestly, why would I ever pay rent? He said, smirking. Harley's got a good thing going. I get to live there for free, all my bills covered, and I don't have to lift a finger. It's perfect. Someone in the background laughed. And the best part, Mason continued, swirling the ice in his drink. Harley is way too soft to ever kick me out. I could probably get away with this for years. The video ended. For a moment I didn't move. I just stood there, the silence pressing in, my grip tightening around the phone. Too soft. The words echoed in my head, louder than the party noise in the background of the video. He had been using me, not just living here because he needed a place, but actively taking advantage of my kindness, knowing I wouldn't do anything about it. A slow, unfamiliar heat rose in my chest. I wasn't the kind of person who got angry easily. I had always been patient, understanding, willing to help when someone was struggling. But this wasn't struggling. This was manipulation. I set my phone down, inhaling deeply. No more. I had let this go on for too long. If Mason thought I was too soft to kick him out, then it was time for him to see just how wrong he was. I didn't sleep that night. After watching the video Aunt Lisa sent, I sat on the couch, replaying Mason's words in my head over and over again. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear his smug voice, that arrogant smirk as he bragged about how he had me wrapped around his finger. Harley is way too soft to ever kick me out. Maybe once that was true, but not anymore. By the time the sun peeked through the blinds, I had already made up my mind. Mason wasn't going to get away with this. He had used me, taken advantage of my kindness, and treated my home like a free ride. That ended today. I got up from the couch, stretched, and grabbed my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen as I debated whether to call him or text him. No, not this time. Mason didn't deserve the courtesy of a conversation. Instead, I went straight to work. I grabbed a few garbage bags and marched into the bedroom. His clothes, his shoes, his stupid collection of colognes, everything went in the bags. I didn't even bother folding them. The way he had treated me, he didn't deserve that much effort. By the time I was done, I had filled 3 large bags with his things. I dragged them to the front door, my breath heavy with determination. Then I walked over to the key rack. Mason's spare key dangled from the hook, a small metal reminder of every time I had trusted him, every time I had defended him, every time I had made excuses for his absence, thinking he was just busy when in reality, he was laughing at me behind my back. I grabbed the key, opened the front door and tossed it outside. With a deep breath, I took out my phone and typed a message. Harley, Mason, your stuff is packed and waiting outside the door. You don't live here anymore. Don't contact me. I hit send and blocked his number immediately. No more arguments. No more explanations. I didn't know him that. As soon as I was done, a wave of relief washed over me. It was strange how quickly the weight lifted from my chest. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt free. I wasn't stupid. I knew Mason would try to talk his way out of this. He would show up, make excuses, try to charm his way back into my life. But I was done being manipulated. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I frowned. It was too early for visitors. When I opened the door, my heart sank. Aunt Lisa stood there, her expression a mix of concern and approval. She must have known I'd seen the video by now. "I take it you watched it," she said gently. I nodded. "Yeah." She glanced behind me, spotting the bags of Mason's things. A slow smile tugged at her lips. "Good. It's about time." I sighed, stepping aside so she could come in. She walked straight to the kitchen as she always did, and poured herself a cup of coffee. I leaned against the counter. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Aunt Lisa sipped her coffee, her eyes soft. "Because I knew you needed to see it for yourself. If I had told you, you might have made excuses for him." I hated how right she was. She set her mug down and reached for my hand. "Harley, you have the biggest heart of anyone I know, but that heart deserves to be protected too." Her words hit deep. For so long, I had been so focused on helping people, making sure everyone else was okay, that I never stopped to think about myself. But today I chose me. The silence after Aunt Lisa left was almost deafening. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, knowing Mason would come storming in any minute. He was predictable that way, arrogant enough to think he could smooth talk his way back into my life. I didn't have to wait long. A loud bang on the door made me jump. "Harley!" Mason's voice boomed from outside. "Open the door." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I had promised I wouldn't let him manipulate me again. But the memories of our years together still lingered. The late night talks, the laughter. How did I not see who he really was? Another bang. "I know you're in there." I squared my shoulders. This is it. No backing down. I walked to the door and opened it just enough to see his face. Mason stood there, breathless, his blue eyes wide with shock. His neatly styled hair was slightly disheveled, probably from rushing over. His gaze flickered past me, landing on the garbage bags stacked near the entrance. "What the hell is this?" He gestured to the bags. I crossed my arms. "Your stuff." Mason scoffed. "You're joking, right?" I didn't respond. His face darkened. "Harley, come on. You're really throwing me out? Over some stupid video?" I clenched my fists. "It's not just the video, Mason. It's everything. You used me. You laughed at me behind my back. I was nothing but a free ride to you." "That's not true," he shot back, stepping closer. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I was just messing around. You know how guys talk." "Stop." My voice was firm, surprising even myself. "I'm done listening to your excuses. Take your things and leave." Mason ran a hand through his hair, his frustration obvious. "Harley baby, don't do this. We've been together for years. We can fix this." "No, I was the only one trying to fix things," I said, my throat tightening. "You just took and took, never giving anything in return. I deserve better." Mason's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he would fight harder, try another angle. But instead, his expression twisted into something cruel. "You're gonna regret this," he muttered. "No one else is gonna put up with you like I did." A bitter laugh escaped me. "That's the whole point, Mason. I don't want someone who puts up with me. I want someone who actually loves me." His face turned red, but I didn't care anymore. The man I had once loved was nothing but a stranger to me now. Mason grabbed the bags angrily, muttering curses under his breath as he stomped down the hallway. I watched until he disappeared around the corner, then slowly closed the door. A shaky exhale escaped me. It was over. For real this time. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes. The apartment was quieter than ever, but instead of feeling lonely, I felt something else entirely: peace. Mason was gone, and for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. The silence in my apartment felt different now, lighter, as if the weight of Mason's presence had finally lifted. But even as I stood there, taking slow, steady breaths, the reality of my situation began to sink in. Where do I go from here? For the past few years, my life had revolved around Mason. Even though I was the one paying the bills and doing all the work, I had gotten used to having him around. Now with him gone, the apartment felt empty. I shook my head. No, not empty, free. I walked into the living room, looking around at the mess he had left behind. Old takeout boxes on the coffee table, his gaming console still plugged into the TV, a hoodie draped over the back of the couch. I grabbed a trash bag and started cleaning. With every discarded wrapper, every piece of junk Mason had left behind, I felt lighter. It was as if I was physically removing his influence from my life. But then I reached the small wooden frame sitting on the shelf, our first photo together. I hesitated. It was taken during our first vacation, Mason and I on a beach, laughing, his arm around my shoulders. I remembered how happy I had been that day, thinking we had forever ahead of us. What a joke! With a deep breath, I flipped the frame over and pulled out the picture. My fingers trembled for just a second before I tore it in half. Then I tossed it into the trash. A strange sense of relief flooded through me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was closure. Ding! My phone vibrated on the counter, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. Aunt Lisa. I smiled and answered. Hey, sweetheart. Her voice was warm, reassuring. How are you holding up? I let out a small laugh. Better than I expected. I'm proud of you, Harley. You did the right thing. I sighed, leaning against the counter. I know. It's just weird. Like, I spent so much time trying to fix things with him. And now that he's gone, I don't even know what to do with myself. Lisa chuckled. Then maybe it's time you start focusing on you for once. I swallowed. Me. I had spent so long catering to Mason's needs, working extra hours to support him, sacrificing my own happiness just to keep him comfortable. Now that he was out of the picture, who even was I without him? I don't even know where to start, I admitted. Then let's start simple, Lisa said. Come over for dinner tonight. You don't have to be alone. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to curl up in bed and let exhaustion take over. But another part, the part that was tired of feeling stuck, knew that saying yes was the first step toward moving on. Okay, I said softly. I'll come over. Good. Lisa's voice was full of warmth. I'll see you soon, sweetheart. As the call ended, I felt a small sense of comfort settle over me. I wasn't alone, and this was just the beginning of something new, something better. I stood in front of my mirror, staring at myself as if I were looking at a stranger. For the past 3 years, I had dressed in ways Mason liked, simple, neutral tones, nothing too flashy. But tonight, I wanted something different, something for me. I reached into the back of my closet and pulled out a dress I hadn't worn in years. It was a deep emerald green, hugging my curves just right. I had always loved this dress, but Mason once said it was too much, and that I should wear something more casual. I slipped it on without a second thought. Looking at my reflection, I felt a surge of confidence I hadn't felt in years. This is me. I grabbed my keys and headed out. Lisa's house was a warm, familiar place, full of laughter, good food, and the comforting scent of home-cooked meals. As I stepped inside, Lisa's eyes widened. Wow, look at you. I smiled. It's been a while since I dressed up. Well, you look stunning. And guess what? I made your favorite lasagna. My stomach rumbled at the mention of it. Mason had never liked lasagna, so I had stopped making it at home. It was strange how much of myself I had lost in that relationship, giving up little things I loved just to keep the peace. I took a deep breath. No more of that. As we sat down to eat, Lisa studied me with a knowing look. So, how do you feel? Really? I twirled my fork in my pasta thinking, honestly, it feels weird. Like I should be sad, but I'm not. I think I was grieving the relationship long before it ended. Lisa nodded. That makes sense. When you spend so much time fighting for something that's already broken, you don't realize you've been letting go little by little. I looked at her, my heart heavy with realization. I gave up so much for him. I know, sweetheart, but now it's time to take it all back. I smiled softly, feeling a strange sense of hope creeping in. Maybe Lisa was right. Maybe this was my chance to start over. After dinner, we sat on the couch with mugs of tea, chatting like we used to before Mason had come into the picture. It felt good. It felt normal. Then Lisa's face lit up with excitement. Oh, you'll never believe this, but I ran into Jamie today. I raised an eyebrow. Jamie from high school? Yes. He just moved back to town. Said he's working as a chef now. I blinked. Jamie Parker. We had been close back in high school, but after graduation, he moved away for culinary school. I hadn't thought about him in years. Lisa smirked. He asked about you, you know. I laughed. Oh, come on. I'm serious. He was shocked to hear you were still in town. Said he'd love to catch up. I rolled my eyes playfully. Lisa, I just got out of a relationship. The last thing I need is another man in my life. She held up her hands in surrender. I'm just saying, doesn't hurt to reconnect with an old friend. I shook my head, but I couldn't ignore the tiny spark of curiosity inside me. Maybe reconnecting wasn't such a bad idea. Maybe this was exactly what I needed.